Welcome, everybody. It's July 23rd, and thank you for joining us on another episode here. I'm joined, as always, by Perry. Make sure you follow us on Twitter at Management Clock to get entered for your chance to win an autographed Le'Veon Bell jersey. Again, that's at Management Clock on Twitter. Also, make sure you go check out our friends over at Shop Culture. They do a variety podcast through Facebook. They cover a bunch of different subjects. They do it the second and fourth Tuesday of every month. It's really a lot of fun to watch. Check them out and give them a like and a follow there on Facebook. Now let's get into the show. This is Clock Management. All right, Perry, you want to get us started with a little bit of news here?
Absolutely. So the first piece of news is the big news. It's Tyreek Hill. We talked about it last week, and of course the news broke immediately after we were done. But the news is no suspension for Tyreek Hill. That's after reports of a possible 4-game suspension. Justin, you thought it could be a full year.
Yeah. This is really surprising to me. It's NFL just so inconsistent with these rulings. You get players that get 2-week suspensions. You get players that out for a lifetime ban, and then you get stuff like this. It's great for your fantasy team if you own them in any way. And with this type of stuff, we're here to talk about the fantasy implications. So we're not going to get into all your personal feelings on it and stuff like that.
Yeah, I agree. I wish they'd be more consistent so we could predict stuff like this, but oh well. Speaking of the fantasy implications, I think there's 3 guys that are really affected by this. Apart from Patrick Mahomes, I think he's happy, but the number one guy I wanted to talk about was Sammy Watkins. I think Sammy Watkins was never going to be the guy. I think Travis Kelce would have been the number one guy those first 4 weeks had Hill been suspended, but I think it hurts Sammy Watkins a little bit. What do you think? You picking up Sammy Watkins?
No, yeah. To me, this just makes Sammy Watkins completely irrelevant in fantasy. He's going to have weeks where he puts up, gets a couple touchdowns, something like that. But predicting those weeks is just going to be impossible, and you're not going to want him on your team in the meantime.
I don't know if I'd call him irrelevant. I guess I would say that if you needed a bye week start, if you're in a deeper, 12 team league, maybe not. But if you're in one of those 14 or 16 team leagues, I think he could be started. But
yeah, I agree with you. So he's gonna be on people's teams. My point is, I'm not going for him. There's other people who are going to be getting drafted in that same area as him that I would rather have than him.
Sure. The other guy is Travis Kelce, like we mentioned. I don't think this affects Travis Kelce almost at all. I guess maybe he could have gotten a few more looks in those first few weeks, but Travis Kelce performed very well with Tyreek Hill in the lineup last season. I think they are both wonderful starts. I think Travis Kelce is going to have another excellent year. And then the other guy is Mecole Hardman. I think this hurts Mecole Hardman a lot. I think he's probably not going to see the field a whole lot. Certainly not as a starter. I think he's a big talent, but he's behind Tyreek Hill, who's not moving. And I do think Sammy Watkins is probably better at this point. But yeah, I mean, Hardman should be owned in maybe a dynasty league, but other than that, I don't think you should expect him to put up any numbers for you.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree with Watkins. As much as I was just talking bad about having Watkins on your team, he's still the better player and the better scheme fit as that possession wide receiver. That's just not Mecole's game, so he's not going to see the field.
Yeah. So, Justin, where would you draft Hill right now? Now that we know he's playing all 16.
I would be going for Hill. He's a first-round pick for me.
Really?
Yeah, he's probably, I really need to, look at the numbers and stuff, but I'd say he's probably my I'm going to say third wide receiver.
He's probably number 5 or 6 for me, to be honest with you. I think he's fantastic. I do think he's a little volatile, though. I think you can kind of get a little boom bust from him sometimes.
I think boom. That boom, baby.
It's a big boom. I think I would take Julio ahead of him. I would take DeAndre Hopkins ahead of him. I would take Devontae Adams ahead of him. I may even take Odell Beckham ahead of him. That's kind of where he falls with me, is Odell Beckham, Tyreek Hill kind of situation. But I would definitely take Julio over him.
For me, it's just Hopkins and Adams, and then Tyreek.
Fair enough. Okay. Great. So then the next piece of news I want to talk about was training camp. It's officially opened. Football season is here, Justin. We did it.
We made it.
We made it. What should we be doing?
Well, I mean, I'm starting to open my presents, look at these ADPs, find the gems.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
Exactly. This is a good time of year for us. Things starting to pick up a lot around here, so it doesn't get too much better than this until draft.
Yeah, draft. It's all a build up till draft right now. Basically, guys, what you should be doing is just mock drafting. Continue to mock draft. I know it's still a little early for some people, but do 1 or 2 a week. You do it on Fantasy Pros or something like that, and it takes 15 minutes, just to do mock draft, and you really get an understanding of where people are going. And then other than that, just start listening to those beat writers, watching for injuries, watching for things that are going well, things that are going poorly with teams.
Or you could do none of that and just listen to our podcast.
Dan, he's right.
We will do all of that for you.
He's right. Okay. So on the news of training camp, of course, injuries come up. One injury I got to talk about is kind of a big one. Julian Edelman. He's going to miss about 3 weeks of training camp. Reports say that it's a sprained thumb that he sustained while catching the football. Personally, I think they're being probably just a little cautious with it. Had it been the playoffs, he definitely, I think, would have been playing. What do you think? You worried about Julian Edelman?
I just think precaution's better than post-caution, So
this guy.
But no, Edelman, I'm not too worried about. They're going to rest him just because his age, and he's going to be ready to go, and he's going to deliver. He does it year after year. We'll see if he could stay healthy the whole year. That's my concern with him, how long he'll last. But he's going to start the year ready to go, and he's going to do great for fantasy teams while he's out there on the field. Yeah.
I think something this is really good for, or person that's really good for, is N'Keal Harry, rookie wide receiver for New England. New England's notoriously difficult for an offense to understand for a young player or even a new player. I think you could ask somebody like Josh Gordon about that. Josh Gordon obviously is a very great football player. I think he has a good football mind, but even he came in there and admittedly struggled with learning that playbook. So basically this will give him 3 weeks to run with the offense and work with Tom Brady. I think this is great for N'Keal Harry. I think he should be owned in Dynasty.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and like you said, this is just going to help him to get up to that NFL speed under someone like Tom Brady. Like he's a great coach. He coaches those players up.
You mean Bill Belichick?
No, Tom Brady.
Oh, okay.
The wide receivers. He coaches them up.
Okay, I got you. No. Damn, I thought I caught you in one. Darn.
No,
okay.
I was actually just talking at work. Like, I really want Tom Brady to retire so I can actually see if Bill Belichick is a great coach or if he just has Tom Brady.
I think he's a great coach.
I think so too, but He also has Tom Brady.
He does. He does. Okay, so another few small pieces of news. Cowboys have cut Allen Hurns after 1 year. He broke his leg at the end of last year. It's unfortunate for him. Vikings cornerback Holton Hill. Apparently, this guy is collecting suspensions this season.
Stocks are really low on those right now. Like, you got to get them while they're cheap. So
apparently,
it's a smart move on his part.
This guy knows something that I don't. He's just added 4 games on to the 4 that he already had. This one is from substance abuse. The previous one is from performance-enhancing drugs.
Yeah, he doubled down.
So that good for him, I guess, right? Tyler Boyd, my boy. You all heard my bold prediction. #1 receiver there in Cincinnati. Just got a 4-year, $43 million extension. Are you as excited as I am?
No. I'm excited. I just know that I'm not as excited as you are because I know how much you love Tyler Boyd.
Correct. All right.
Also, and then we got some news that nobody cares about as well.
Oh, yeah. First, let's take a moment, everybody, and just appreciate the man, Mark Buttfumble Sanchez, has finally retired. He's going to be joining ESPN. I think we're losing something here, guys.
I think that was long enough to wait for that moment of silence. So now, also, Tom Brady jumped off of a cliff with his daughter. It's all over the news. Again, nobody cares. So let's get into some football here, Perry.
Absolutely, let's do it.
All right, so we're gonna do the same thing we did last week with our picks, choosing
for divisions.
Division. We're doing the Eastern divisions. So NFC and AFC, picking a quarterback, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, a tight end, a flex, and a defense. You can only pick 1 per team. And we decided to do the East this one, and that is not as easy as you might think.
It's a big oof. It's a big oof there in the East.
There's some obvious picks, and then there's some oh no's.
There's some oh no teams.
Yeah.
Let's be clear.
True.
Yeah, well, let me just kick it off here. We'll start at the top with quarterback. Kind of a surprising one. You and I were talking before. I went with Ryan Fitzmagic out there in Miami. You know, the guy can do it. He can do it.
Believe in magic.
I do believe in magic. You know, he can do it. He's done it before. He's also not done it before. But I went with Ryan Fitzpatrick, mostly because I didn't want to touch a single wide receiver on that team.
Yeah. So I went with the guy who has not done it before. I went with Josh Allen. I do believe he is going to do it this season a lot better than a lot of these other guys, quarterbacks on these teams. And also, I couldn't pick a quarterback on a few of these teams just because I needed other players on those teams.
Yeah. Hey, Josh Allen's a great player. I think he's going to be a really good NFL quarterback. So,
yeah.
Okay, so we'll look at running backs now. My first running back I took was Zeke from the Cowboys. I think it's an obvious pick. In standard, I think he's the number 1 overall draft pick.
Yeah, actually, I have him as my number 1 in all 3 formats.
That's
which
not
I
crazy.
Know, a lot of people don't, but I do. So take that.
Yeah. Did you also take him?
Yes. Yeah. I'd be crazy not to. Yeah. I feel like both these running backs are just
obvious.
So obviously the second running back is going to be Saquon.
Absolutely. Saquon Barkley's a monster.
Did you consider taking Eli Manning as your quarterback instead, though?
Just to make you laugh.
I would have appreciated that.
Yeah. I think Saquon should expect a little regression this year on a really bad offense, but I don't think it's going to affect his ranking all that much. I think if you get Saquon Barkley, you should be happy. Yeah,
that's literally the only reason I don't have him ahead of Zeke is because of that offense.
If he's on a good team, he is by far the best draft pick this year. The guy is unbelievably talented.
Yeah. Okay. So we actually agreed on our next pick as well on the first wide receiver. And we went with New England for the team. So we both went with Julian Edelman.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, we just talked about his injury. I'm not too concerned. He's the number 1 receiver on a Tom Brady team. We all saw what he did in the Super Bowl. I actually have a funny story about the Super Bowl. I went to a friend's house to watch it. During warm-ups, they were showing Julian Edelman warming up. I yelled across the room, "Hey, Ben, that guy's going to win the Super Bowl MVP." He basically told me to shut up. I was right. I like Julian Edelman. The guy's he's a player.
And then, so the second wide receiver, who do you go with? This one we started to differ on.
This is where it gets rough, everybody. I want everybody to hold on tight, okay? That team out there in Washington, D.C., that is. I went with Josh Doxson, okay?
They do still have a team, don't they?
Yeah, they do. Josh Doxson. The only reason I went with Josh Doxson is because he was the best player on that really bad team. He's still not very good. So don't own Redskins this year.
I couldn't bring myself to do that. you'll understand more in a pick or two why Perry chose to do that. But I went with Robbie Anderson over on the Jets, so that was a hard choice.
Yeah.
But yeah, I decided to go with him, which obviously gave up a pick later here.
Yeah.
We'll get into that in the flex.
Well, let's do the flex now.
Okay. Yeah. You're right.
Yeah.
So the flex we got. Oh, go ahead, Perry.
Yeah. So I took Le'Veon Bell on the flex. I mean, I looked at Josh Doxson, and obviously he's a write-off for me. I don't really care, but if I were to have Le'Veon Bell making up for it, then that shouldn't be a problem.
Yeah, and then I went with Kenyon Drake down in Miami, so I'm just banking on the combination of Kenyon Drake and Anderson outperforming the combination of Le'Veon Bell and who was that guy? The
Josh
other one?
Doxson.
Yeah, that guy. Yeah, so that's what I got for my flex. Tight end, we both went with a tight end we will not be talking about on. Oh, actually, I take that back. We will not be talking about why you should draft this tight end on this show. Okay. So we both went with Zach Ertz, and he's the obvious pick there. I think he's a great tight end, and I mean
I think he's a fantastic player. I think
best player on that team.
Probably. I mean, I think you could make an argument there. Probably the second best tight end in the league, I guess, if you looked at everything. But
yeah, that's where I got him.
We'll talk about him more later. And then for my defense, I took the Bills. The Bills defense. I don't have a lot to say about the Bills defense.
Yeah, and I took the Washington team.
Yeah, we don't need to talk about them. Okay.
Yeah, let's move on from there. Let's get into these tight ends.
Yeah. So this is the tight end show, guys. Justin and I have hand-picked 4 tight ends each to talk about. They're not in any particular order. We like some of them. We dislike some of them. Some of them it's based on ADP. Some of them it's based on the actual player. So we'll go over them one at a time here. I think something to note about tight end, it's a very volatile position in fantasy football. If you have a good one, it could propel you into the playoffs because it's a position that scoring a lot in this position, not everybody's able to do it. There's just not enough tight ends in the league. If you spend a high-end draft pick, though, on a tight end, and then that tight end gets injured, that's a huge investment that is now not on the field. So that's something that we consider when we're talking about tight ends.
Yeah, I'm a big advocate for picking a late tight end. Just because the value you can get for other positions. And like Perry said, that tight end doesn't perform, and you basically just lost out on 2 positions. So I'll take that shot on a late tight end because every year there's a handful of tight ends that are drafted or that are outside the top, ranked tight ends on ADP that are a tight end 1.
Yeah, and being a tight end 1 isn't that big of a deal, right? Basically, if you're not getting one of these top guys, you're just hoping for a touchdown. You're hoping for 6 receptions, something like that. So it's a weird position. It's not a very fun position to draft for, but I don't know. I had fun researching these guys. So
this was actually a lot more fun than I thought it'd be. I wasn't super excited about doing a tight end show. And as I dug into these stats, I felt like I found a lot of hidden gems. Sure. I'm going to kick it off, Perry, just because I want to get straight into this first tight end that I know we disagree on.
Yeah, let's go.
Yeah. All right, so my first tight end is Jordan Reed. You can hear the disappointment in Perry's silence. So Jordan Reed is a tight end 1 in 49% of games he has played. Again, that's games he has played because he is known to not play in games. That's higher percent than Ertz or Hunter Henry. He's a great tight end when he's on the field. Obvious health scare. He gets injured all the time. That sucks. But you pick him up. He's healthy right now. you play him and you ride him into the ground until he gets injured. And then you pick up any one of these other tight ends we got on this show that aren't being drafted, and you continue to ride, that high horse, that's going to win you games. He's going to win you games. He played 13 games last year, which was the highest he's played in quite some time. So it's the healthiest he's been, which, isn't great, but still, like I said, tight end 1 and 49%. Last year, his touchdowns saw a huge decrease from his norm. So I expect that to actually rebound, and he's going to, outperform his ADP, which is undrafted. So it's hard not to outperform that. But you got to just trust the process with those touchdowns. Touchdowns will come. You get enough receptions, they're going to start coming. You can't predict them. So when you see an outlier like that, that's the type of player I love. That you see that small touchdown per reception last from the previous year. I'm going to trust that you're going to see positive regression there.
Who's throwing Jordan Reed the ball?
It doesn't matter because he's the most talented person on that field.
Okay.
Mark Sanchez.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Jordan Reed. I'm sorry. I can't agree on Jordan Reed. You talked about his touchdowns. Here are his touchdown totals for every season of his career: 3, 0, 11, 6, 2, and 2. I just don't see where he would fit in my draft at any point. There's people that I'm going to talk about guys today that I can get my last pick too that I would take over Jordan Reed. If I knew that Jordan Reed was going to be healthy all season, I agree with you 100%, but he's never played a full season in his career.
Are you keeping your tight end past their bye week?
Probably not. It depends. It depends on what tight end you have, right?
Yeah, if you have Jordan Reed, you're not. If you have most tight ends that you're going to draft at the end, you're not. So that's why I'm fine with it. I'm not trying to keep him all year round. I'm trying to help him get me to that bye week, hopefully stay healthy to there.
I guess I agree with you in the practice of drafting him where you are, because you don't care about dropping him. I agree with that. And the upside, I guess, is real with Jordan Reed. We've seen it. But I don't know. I hope I'm wrong. I'll say that. I hope I'm wrong.
And also with he does have like a lack of talent at the QB there, obviously. But usually when you have that, those are the players that like to home in on their tight end. It's like their safety blanket.
That's true. If anybody's wondering, it is Colt McCoy throwing the football.
We'll see Colt week 1.
McCoy. Okay. All right. Enough about Jordan.
There's plenty of time for him to lose that job.
Okay. So we're gonna take a look at the other end of the spectrum here. We're gonna talk about Zach Ertz. We already teased this earlier on in the show. I just want to talk about Zach Ertz really bad. I love Zach Ertz. I think he's a really good player, but his current ADP is late second round. That is really high. I'm not okay with drafting Zach Ertz in the second round. That means you're giving up on a potential top 10 running back, top 10 receiver for a tight end. So I think that Zach Ertz is probably going to see a little bit of regression this year, basically because of the insane target and reception numbers that he had last year. In 2018, Zach Ertz had 116 receptions on 156 targets. 156 targets. That's elite wide receiver numbers. That's like closing in on Juju Smith-Schuster, on Antonio Brown. That's crazy for a tight end. I just don't see that happening again. I think that we could probably see something closer to around 130 to 135 targets this season, which is a pretty large regression in targets, and then maybe around 95 receptions. I have him pegged right around 1,000 yards, which is about almost 200 less than he had last season. He did have 8 touchdowns last season, which I could see him returning to the 8 touchdown mark again. But with the reduced number of receptions, it just doesn't make sense taking him in the second round. What do you think?
No, yeah, I'm completely on board with this. Again, like I think drafting one of those top tight ends just isn't worth it by their ADP alone. The only one I really see an argument for is Travis Kelce.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely it's just not worth that what you're dropping for him. Like you said, he's approaching the numbers of a Juju, and you have to choose him over Juju.
Yeah, exactly. That's a really good example.
How does that make sense?
So I know I might catch some grief for saying this, but he could easily finish the season the number one tight end. It wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility. And I might be putting my foot in my mouth by the end of the year, but I'm not taking him until the 4th round. That's the only time. That's at the point where I would consider taking Zach Ertz, and even then, it's all about roster construction, and that's when I make that choice. So that's my take on Zach Ertz. Great player, should be owned, just not with your second pick.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to get into another player here, another one of those top ones that we're just speaking about. So George Kittle. He's another one of those players going way too high. At first glance, you might think, Kittle's going to have an even better year this year than last year on an improved offense with, better quarterback play. But with that better quarterback play, as I mentioned before, these less experienced quarterbacks tend to hone in on their tight ends and hyper target them. So Kittle, I don't expect him to get as many targets. It's going to get spread around the field as much. Perry was talking about how much Ertz was targeted. Kittle was second right behind him. He had 26% of the team's target share last year. That's a huge amount for the tight end position. And a team playing from behind as well for almost every game. That's not going to be the case this year with that better offense. So you're going to see less targets this year than last year. And then he played the year before that. I don't know if anyone's aware of this. He doubled every one of his stats and tripled his touchdowns. So don't look at that as oh, he's going to continue this. You're going to see some regression there. I'm not saying he's going back to those stats, but you're going to see some regression. He's a great player. I'm not saying he's a horrible player, don't draft him. I'm saying don't draft him at his current ADP. It's just not worth it. If you're drafting him at his current ADP, you're skipping out on people like Keenan Allen, T.Y. Hilton, Marlon Mack, Leonard Fournette, and Damian Williams. Those are people going right around him, and he's not worth that value. You're gonna lose that and have to get a running back that should be in your flex spot.
Yeah, I will say I think George Kittle is definitely going to see some regression. I think the regression is going to probably show up, like you said, in the targets and then also in the yards. I don't think he's going to break 1,300 yards again this season. I just don't see it happening. I will say that.
Quick note. I said he tripled his touchdown numbers. He doubled his touchdowns. He tripled his yards from the year before.
Okay. Yeah, he had five receiving touchdowns last season. I could see that number actually going up. But the yards going down. Again, George Kittle maybe 4th or 5th round probably is what I would be really happy to get George Kittle in the 5th round.
Yeah, I feel the same way. For him, again, I could see Ertz finishing as the number 1 tight end, but I'm not drafting either one of them before the 5th, and I wouldn't draft Reed until the 4th, and I know I'm not getting that. So
Reed?
Yeah. Or sorry.
Oh, God, I told you we're done with Jordan Reed, Justin.
I'm drafting him in the 4th. You can't stop me. No, I'm sorry. I meant, oh, shoot. Help me out here.
Kittle? Ertz?
No, one more.
Kelce?
There we go. Red team. Travis Kelce, yeah. I want to draft him before the 3rd. So, 3rd or 4th, back into the 3rd, front into the 4th.
I would personally love Travis Kelce in the 3rd, but yeah. Okay, cool. So next tight end I want to talk about, man, I'm really setting myself up here. If we had followers on Twitter, they would hate me. So Jimmy Graham. Jimmy Graham is the next tight end I want to talk about.
No, we just gained all of the followers from the Packers. They're all now following us.
Come on, guys. Come on in right here.
And all of the Seattle followers just stopped following us.
Absolutely. Jimmy Graham, ADP in the 17th round, which means he's free. Completely free. I know we've been down this road with Jimmy Graham before, but when it comes to Jimmy Graham, we just need to at least look down this road one more time. The talent's there. It's just like you were saying with Jordan Reed. The talent is there. He had one catastrophic injury, an injury that most guys shouldn't come back from, and he did, and he had a very good season in Seattle. The 2017 season in Seattle was his best season there. He had 57 receptions on 96 targets, 10 touchdowns. That's great. If I'm getting those numbers from my tight end that I'm taking in the 17th round, I'm very happy. Now, a lot of you are looking at last season, 2018, and saying, well, he was terrible, right? The fact is, he had 55 receptions on 89 targets for 2 touchdowns. Okay?
Yeah.
It was Aaron Rodgers' worst year as a professional. Okay? There is no way that a healthy Jimmy Graham ends this season with just 2 touchdowns. It's impossible. It's not going to happen. He had the targets. He had the receptions. It was just the touchdowns he was missing, or else he would have repeated basically the 2017 season in Seattle. He had the 6th most targets by a tight end last year, if you can believe that. People that had less targets than him: Austin Hooper, Jordan Reed, Kyle Rudolph, Vance McDonald, Evan Ingram. These are all that's more targets. Jimmy Graham had more targets than all those guys, and we're drafting all those guys
way ahead,
light years ahead of him. I'm not saying that you should reach up and grab Jimmy Graham in some ridiculous round, but you know what? If your guy doesn't fall to you in whatever round you're hoping to get him, fine. Just sit on it and take Jimmy Graham later. I really think you're going to be happy with it. If we can get double-digit touchdowns out of a guy in the 17th round, I'm completely happy. I think that that would probably put you in the playoffs, considering what you didn't have to give up to get a tight end earlier.
Absolutely. And I think the best argument for Jimmy Graham is Aaron Rodgers. No one is predicting Aaron Rodgers to not have positive regression from last year. Like, everyone expects a big bounce back from Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah.
If you expect that, then you have to expect that from Jimmy Graham as well.
Yeah, definitely.
This is actually my favorite pick from either one of us. Like, I was telling Perry before, I wanted to talk about this guy as well. So when I saw he was talking about him, I'm like, oh man. But it's a great pick. Like, this is my favorite guy on this list. ADP, in consideration, obviously.
He's free.
So my next guy I'm going to talk about is Evan Ingram. And I want to give a shout out to Sean Rivera from Twitter. He asked if we would talk about this guy. So I will kindly oblige. So OBJ averaged over 140 targets a season during his time there. Those targets are gone. Golden Tate is not receiving 140 balls a year. Like, that's not, no one is expecting that. He's not being drafted there. So those targets have to go somewhere. They're not all going. I'm not saying that Evan Ingram's getting 140 targets. I'm saying he's going to get a share of those targets. Mm-hmm. So with that increased production, he's going to benefit from it. And Eli loves his short passes. He loves those 5-10 yard passes, especially like getting the later into his career. He leans on those, and the horrible offensive line play, which is why I don't like Saquon as much as Zeke this year. It forces you to throw short. You don't have time in the pocket to allow a receiver to go downfield. They don't have a player who can stretch that field like at a quick rate either. They don't have a Tyreek Hill who can just sprint down that field and get there in no time. So he's going to be throwing the ball short. And the tight end's a great position for that. You get mismatches there. So I just really look for him to have that. He had again, low touchdowns compared to his catches last year. That's something that I like to look for in especially tight ends. Despite like that poor offense in New York, he's going right around the 5th round right now, and I've seen him fall as low as the 7th round. I just think he's a steal there anywhere past the 5th round. Like you get him in the 6th, 7th round, and that's great. I'm not drafting him in the 5th round. Again, I'm not big on tight ends, but you'll watch as those other tight ends get drafted, those top 3, 4, you're going to watch him fall down from that ADP. And if you see him fall down there, go ahead and grab him and feel great about it. Pop a bottle of champagne.
Yeah, I like Evan Ingram this year. I think if you get Evan Ingram a little later than what he's currently going at, you're getting a steal in the draft. I like what you said about the targets coming from OBJ. It's the same conversation that we're having in Pittsburgh with Antonio Brown's targets. Where are they going to go? I'll talk about that later. But again, the targets have to go somewhere. I understand that Eli Manning is Eli Manning, and he's this joke that we like to make all the time. But he's won 2 Super Bowls. The guy can throw a football. That's got to go somewhere. Evan Ingram is going to be the best receiver on that team.
Yeah. Definitely. You want to get into that? Into that Pittsburgh talk?
Yeah. So, good segue here. My next guy is Vance McDonald. Vance is a man. Vance is the tight end that I'm targeting this year, big time, which means our buddy Joel will probably steal him from me. Shout out to Joel.
Hashtag Joel Brennar.
Hashtag Joel Brennar. His ADP right now is in the middle of the 8th round, which is, man, that is a sweet spot for me when you're drafting a starting tight end. That means you've gone ahead and filled out your whole roster. You've got your flex, you got your running backs, got your receivers. I might not have a quarterback yet, but I will. I would take Vance McDonald at that point. His 2018 stats: he had 50 receptions on 72 targets with 4 touchdowns. Not huge, not bad, but 168 targets that went to Antonio Brown are now free. They're out in the air, and people need to grab them. We talked about it last week with the quarterbacks. Juju Smith-Schuster isn't going to see 200 targets. Yeah, it's just not going to happen. Even if 30 or 40 of the 168 targets that went to Antonio Brown went to Vance McDonald, that would be amazing, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's roughly about 2 more targets per game than what he already had, which would put him over 100 targets for the season. And as opportunities king, 100 targets to my tight end that I got in the 8th round makes me a very, very happy boy. Let's see. So I think that the one risk with Vance McDonald is his touchdown count. It's never been all that high. He's been in the league 6 years, and he's had 12 total touchdowns in those 6 years. 4 of those years were with San Francisco. San Francisco hasn't been good for a while, but it could be that Vance and Big Ben don't really mesh in the end zone very well. But I
don't think that's the case. I think the more likely case in that scenario is that Big Ben and Antonio Brown did mesh so well.
Yeah.
He just got those touchdowns. That's who he trusted in that situation. Yeah.
I'm just trying to figure out why maybe those numbers have been so low throughout his career, but that's probably a really good reason. And it's not going to scare me from taking him in the draft. I spoke about if the guy that you want you lose the guy that you want, that Jimmy Graham would be the person to maybe go get late. This is the guy that I want. So.
And like I said, I actually look for those low touchdown rates with players because you're going to see that. Melvin Gordon's first year, I don't think he made it into the end zone. And then the next year, he made it into the end zone a ridiculous amount.
Yeah, it really does feel like it doesn't feel right that he scored so few touchdowns. I agree with you. The last thing I want to say basically is I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that next season when we're drafting, we're talking about drafting Vance McDonald ahead of people like George Kittle and Zach Ertz. Maybe even ahead of Travis Kelce. I don't know. That might be crazy, but ahead of the other two big three, if that's what you'd like to call
No, I absolutely agree with you. That is crazy. No,
okay, Jordan Reed.
I think it's a little too much for me, but I do think he's severely undervalued. I could see him over like OJ Howard and maybe like a Kittle, you know.
Yeah.
I could see him. I see him as a Kittle. So
I think if Big Ben does not retire at the end of this season, we could be seeing a real big jump in the ADP for Vance McDonald, but time will tell.
All right, so I'm gonna get into my last tight end on this list. I went with Noah Fant. He's a rookie coming into Denver. So I knew Perry would like that. But yeah, so I want to start out by saying he is a rookie. Rookie tight ends almost never hit. It's a rarity.
Yeah, it's terrible.
Yeah, and so that being said, let's talk about his opportunity and skill. So Fant is the best pass catching tight end coming out of the draft, and he's walking into the Broncos with like a murky receiving core pecking order. So he could possibly just end up being like their best receiver on that team. That's like not crazy to think. They're tight, or for their team that down there in Denver, they have the best quarterback for a tight end you could want with Joe Flacco. Joe Flacco loves throwing to the tight end. He's made a career out of it. He also has a dark, mysterious beard that just draws me to him, that he's grown this offseason. So it makes me love him a little bit. Sorry, I got distracted. But yeah, so I'm not telling you like you should go for this guy early. I'm not telling you, oh, you go pick Noah Fant in the 8th round. Don't do that. That's stupid. Go ahead and pick this guy up with your last pick. You see how he turns out. You have no emotional attachment to him. You could drop him on week 2 if you don't like him.
I mean, you could pick him up as your second tight end, really, if you wanted to, and drop him before even the end of the season. We talked about it a few weeks ago. You don't have to draft a defense. You don't have to draft a kicker.
Absolutely.
Sit on Noah Fant for a little while. And the preseason, if he goes out and he's the man, you could have a steal.
Yeah, you'll look like a genius.
Yeah.
And if you miss, no harm, no foul. Drop him and pick up, the Washington Redskins defense,
Well, I can't put my name on that. I don't advise that.
But yeah, so that's my last tight end I wanted to talk about. Perry, you got another one?
Yeah, I do. I have one more here. Austin Hooper. I wanted to talk about Austin Hooper. He's kind of number 2 on my list of guys I'm targeting behind Vance McDonald. I could see an argument of putting him ahead. Basically, I think Austin Hooper might be the most underrated tight end, or at least the least talked about right now, with really high skill. This guy's really good. He finished 6th at the tight end position last year. And it's only his 4th season. Justin just talked about rookie tight ends really struggling. That usually continues on for a couple of years. It's a really tough position in the NFL. It's a really hard position to learn. Austin Hooper is only in his 4th season, so I fully expect him to improve.
Yeah, he's got a great situation down there on a great offense, and he's last year he seemed to finally be like the offense seemed to be clicking with him.
Yeah. Yeah, he had 71 receptions on 88 targets. That's 71 receptions on 88 targets. He catches almost everything thrown at him. He only had 4 touchdowns. Justin talked about Melvin Gordon earlier, about the low number of touchdowns. It just doesn't feel right that he only had 4 touchdowns. I think it could be closer to 8. with similar receiving numbers. I don't know if he's going to quite get to 100 receptions. I think right around that 88 to 90, 95-ish is pretty high for him. I think his ceiling's around 95. But if you tick that touchdown number up to 8, and we're lumping this guy in almost with the big 3, just behind them. I think we'd put him above O.J. Howard at that point. The nice thing about the numbers is they're easily repeatable. The thing with George Kittle and Zach Ertz is we're chasing these huge outliers, these record-setting seasons, these things that never happen, and we're expecting them to happen again. Whereas with Austin Hooper, easily exactly what we got last year could happen again or better. I don't think it would be crazy if he finished in the top 3, but I guarantee he will finish in the top 10 as long as he stays healthy. The bottom line is he's on an explosive team with a really good offense. He's got a really good quarterback. He's got Julio Jones out there taking double and triple teams. And then Calvin Ridley on the other side, man. There's room here for Austin Hooper, and he gets to play inside for half the season, which is always a bonus, right?
Yeah, and I actually think their team's going to have to pass the ball a little bit more. I mean, Freeman hasn't he's been having some health injury or health scares, and then they lost Tevin Coleman. And I really just don't think they have the running back core down there to support how much they ran in the past, which I think will increase their passing, which they're not low on how much they pass the ball. So that'll just add targets to be had.
Yeah. Okay. So that's there's 8 tight ends to go ahead and think about. That was episode 3, guys. Everybody, thank you for being here. I think I just want to remind everybody about the giveaway that we have on Twitter right now for the Le'Veon Bell jersey. I think Justin's got it right there. If you're on YouTube, you'll be able to see it. It's there. It's ready to go. It needs a home. It's still packaged up. It could be yours. We just need the 300 followers on Twitter. We're getting close. Tell your friends. Tell your dad. Tell your grandma. Grandma could win a Le'Veon Bell jersey.
Yeah. I mean, I would actually prefer it if someone's grandma won. That would just, that would make my day.
Absolutely. Yeah. Anyways, thank you everybody for listening. Thank you for watching. If you watched on YouTube, please shout out. We're happy to answer any questions, happy to cover any players that people are curious about. Just let us know on Twitter, comment on YouTube, however you'd like to get a hold of us. Justin, anything you want to cover before we close it out?
I just got one thing real quick. I just want to remind everyone, as always, suck it, Andy.
#suck it, Andy.